Hi, I'm Dr. Tamara, and today I am going to do a tutorial on making Rick Simpson oil for cancer cure. The reason that I decided to do this tutorial is because there is a plethora of information out there on making lots of Rick Simpson oil. And there is very little information about making it on a smaller scale. And when you're making it for personal use, watching a tutorial where they're using, buckets and having to mix it, and there's lots of cautionary statements. Well, when you make it on a smaller scale, you have a lot less risk involved, for one thing, and it's very quick and easy. And being able to make it on your own gives you a lot more control over the product as well. You get to choose what you want and what kind of medical marijuana you want to use. And so it gives you a lot more flexibility on what's right for you. And for instance, this is a 1 ounce of medical marijuana, and I'm using the term medical marijuana repeatedly because you never want to use a street drug. There is no regulation. It can contain impurities. It can have dangerous qualities. So you want something that is regulated. And it's also nice because most of the quality dispensaries will also be able to tell you exactly what the qualities of the marijuana are. You have THCs and CBDs in medical marijuana. And the THCs are what are responsible for the more psychoactive part of this herb. The CBDs, they actually block the psychoactive quality of the medical marijuana. So it makes it where you're not actually getting high, but you're still receiving pain relief. It still works against diseases. And so you get a lot of the positive qualities without so much of what some feel is the negative quality of medical marijuana. However, Rick Simpson, if you go to phoenixtears.com, he explains in a video very, very well how you actually start very small. You start off with the amount that's equal to the size of a grain of rice. And that's what you take in a day. And then you build up very slowly from there. And as you're building up, your body kind of works up a resistance to the THC. So you don't get as many of the psychoactive qualities, because that's not what you're after. You're after the medical qualities of the marijuana. So, as I mentioned, this is 1 ounce, and that's what I would use. It's enough, not too much, not too little, and it'll give you approximately 2 to 4 grams of oil, and that is a decent amount. And the determining factor for that is just how much resin is in the medical marijuana that you're using to make the oil to begin with. What's nice about making it on a smaller scale as well is that you can see I've broken this all apart. When you're using a pound, it would take you forever to go through and clean it up and break it up. And so when you are using your solvent, you have a lot more of the actual oils being released into it because you've broken it apart. Here is what the bud looks like. And if you don't want to, it breaks apart very easily with your fingers. You can just, break it apart, remove the stems. But if you don't want to have it on your hands, you can get a grinder. This is a very small grinder, but you can get a larger one to use. Just takes a couple of twists, and there you have it. So then you just dump it out and you're ready to go. So what I have here is, of course, our medical marijuana. I prefer using Everclear as my solvent. This is not available for sale in every state. Most states allow it, but in some states it's illegal. And in that instance, you will have to personally investigate which solvent you want to use and what you feel comfortable with. And if you do a search, there's a lot of discussion about it. And some people use naphtha, some people use isopropyl alcohol. I like this because it's 100% natural, and you don't have to worry if there is solvent, have I left a little bit of solvent in my medicine, and is that going to be detrimental rather than beneficial? So Everclear is my solvent of choice because one, it's safer, two, it is 100% natural, and it works really easily and very quickly. And it extracts the oil very effectively. I use just a big ceramic. Lots of people use plastic. I prefer not to use plastic just because you're using a solvent and you're extracting things, and you just don't want to extract anything from the plastic and put that into your medicine. So I use ceramic. You can use glass, ceramic, porcelain, anything where you're not going to be leaching metals or plastics into your medicine. I then add the herb to my container, and you can see that it is pretty full. And then I am going to add the solvent. And you can see that the solvent is just probably an inch or so above the actual herb. And once I have my solvent in place, I'm just going to use any kind of mixing device of your choice. And you want to do this for about 3 minutes, just mixing it around, kind of mashing it down. And what this does is it moves the herb and allows the solvent to extract all of the oils. And we're actually going to do this part of the process 2 times. So we're going to add the solvent, mix it around for a few minutes, extracting all of these oils. Then we're going to strain this, put the herb back into our ceramic container, and then go ahead and add more solvent and do the same thing 1 more time. So I'm going to let this sit for a little bit and then go over some other things while that's resting a minute, and then we'll get started with extracting. This is a muslin bag, and I've just found that this is a lot easier to use to extract the liquid and to strain out the herb. It is tightly knit. A lot of people use cheesecloth, but it is a loose weave, so you have to use multiple layers, and this can be reused. And what I do is just find a container that the top will fit over nicely, and then you can just give this a little bit more stirring. And then you'll just pour it into here. And you'll have the herb at the bottom. So then you'll just take it and go slowly so that it doesn't spill all over. Put it into your sack. And it doesn't matter if you have some left because you're doing this twice, so you'll get a second go at it. And then you just tighten your bag, and you can wear gloves for this. My hands are super clean. This kills 99.9% of all bacteria, viruses, any little nasty microbe. So it is actually as powerful, if not more so, than bleach because it dehydrates them on contact, any kind of microbe that it comes in contact with. So you are safe washing your hands and then using your hands to do this. And I just rinse off with this too before I get started, so that I know that my hands are very sanitary. But you can also go to a drugstore and get a pair of rubber, like just doctor's gloves, you know, the medical grade gloves, and you can wear those. I would use latex free, just to be on the safe side. Again, you just don't want to add anything that doesn't belong in your medicine. And you end up with a very green liquid, and that contains all of the resin mixed into your solvent. And now we'll open up our sack, and then we're going to dump the herb back into our cup, and there we have it. And now we're going to go ahead and add another dose of solvent, exactly the same. You want it, you know, just to be rising a bit above. And you know, if you overindulge in the solvent, it's not a big deal. It is going to evaporate out of the medicine. It just, you know, takes a little bit longer when the more liquid you have, of course, the more liquid you'll have to cook off of your resin. And so it'll just take a little bit longer, but it doesn't hurt it. It doesn't do anything negative. So again, I'm going to do just the same thing. I'm just going to mash this around for about 3 minutes. And if you're making it, you can let it rest if you want to, and mix it, and then just go do something for 5 or 10 minutes if you want to give it some extra time. But truly, about 3 minutes of vigorous stirring releases all of the resin into your solvent, and you're good to go. And 2 times is sufficient. I wouldn't do more than that because you start losing your resin value, and then you're just adding too much liquid, and it's, again, just takes you longer to get your finished product. So now we'll go ahead and set this up again, and we'll be getting our bag down into the liquid that's already there, but it doesn't matter, because then we'll be pulling it back out. So now we're going to pour this into our cup. And again, just scooting slowly so we don't have a big mess to clean up. Scoot this all into here. And as you can see, it doesn't take any fancy equipment. That was one thing that I wanted as well in this tutorial, is just to show that pretty much you can, you don't have to have special burners or any kind of special equipment to get this job done. Pretty much you can, even if you have, the cheesecloth, that's very easy to find if you can't find a muslin sack, then cheesecloth does work and works very, very effectively. So now we've got pretty much all of the liquid out of there. I'm going to grab a paper towel and clean up my mess here. Just a tiny bit of spillage. Now, this is an organic pan. It is where it doesn't have Teflon. So you're also not releasing any of those chemicals, because every time you heat a regular non-stick pan, it does release chemicals from the Teflon into whatever you're cooking or your medicine. So I like using something that is non-stick because it just makes it easier. And I also found that I started off using a smaller container, and Rick Simpson suggests using a rice cooker and doing a lot of medicine at one time. But if you use a pan, it spreads it out, and so it also reduces your time because you're evaporating your solvent much faster from a wider area than if you're, if everything is stacked into a container that's small but tall, then you're having to, you're only evaporating from a very small area, so it takes a lot longer. From evaporating from a pan with a very wide surface, your job is done very quickly. And what I do is I take 2 pans. This also makes it very safe, because I use a bigger pan, and you just find 2 pans that fit nicely together. This one fits just really nicely right inside there. And when you use water instead of actually putting the medicine onto, or your mixture with your resin and your solvent, putting it directly onto a heat source, one, you have to be very, very cautious of how hot everything is getting, because you don't want this to get too hot, or it actually reduces the effect of the medicine. It actually kind of kills the THC and CBD value. So you need some heat to activate it. It has to have some heat to actually make it potent. But then if you go over a certain amount of heat, then it actually starts reducing the potency. So you have to watch your heat too much. If you use a water bath, you don't have to worry about it because it's not going to get hot. And the solvent actually burns off at a very low heat. So I actually will bring this to boiling and then just turn my heat off. And this will continue just in the hot water bath. It will continue, the solvent will just continue and continue and continue to burn off until all you're left with is a resin. So that's what we're going to do, is just pour all of this resin-laden solvent into our pan. And then we'll come around and take a look at this real quick. And here we have it. And so now what will happen is, as this water bath increases, then the solvent increases in heat, then the solvent is going to start bubbling, and you'll see lots of bubbling, just like it's boiling water. But actually, you are at a very low heat. So we'll pause for a minute while we allow this to reach a point of boiling, and then I'll let you take a peek at that. And then we'll just peek in at it every so often until we reach a point where you can actually see the resin, and then we'll draw off the resin and we'll be done. And that's how easy it is. I mean, we're basically finished outside of just letting the solvent burn off, and then we have the medicine, the Rick Simpson oil. So that's how easy it is to make your own on a small scale. So I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, we're back, and now our water, as you can see, the water underneath is just barely boiling. I've turned the heat off, but as you can see, look at how the solvent is boiling. It's a rapid boil as it evaporates off, and it will continue to do this until all of the solvent is gone, and what will be left in the bottom of this pan will be the medicine, the Rick Simpson oil. The resin is all that will be left. So we're going to let this go ahead, and what I'll do is just keep checking back in with you, and we'll take a peek just every now and then, and you'll be able to just kind of get an idea of the entire process until we're down to just the medicine. Okay. So now we're back. It's been about 15 minutes that this has been reducing, and depending on how much solvent and how long this has to go, you may have to turn your heat on and bring your water back up to a certain temperature until the solvent starts bubbling again, because you always want to see some bubbling. And it will get less so as the solvent is diminishing. And this is just a silicone scraper. And silicone is really good to use because it's not going to put any plastic materials into your medicine. But as you can see, look how much this has reduced. And now you can see that instead of being that light green color, we are reaching an almost black color, and that's quite normal for this solvent. Because it extracts some of the chlorophyll as well as the THC and CBDs, and that is just fine. And so you can mess with this and just kind of stir it, and then let it go a little bit more, and until what you're looking for is to have it where you're no longer seeing bubbles. So if you're seeing bubbles at all, then you know there is still solvent left in your medicine. And when you finally reach the point where you have only the medicine at the bottom and it's no longer bubbling whatsoever, then it is finished. And so what we'll do is go ahead and pause one more time, and when we come back we will have our finished product. It will be totally reduced, and then you'll get to see exactly what it looks like. And it'll still be very thin when it's still warm. But as it cools, it will thicken into a very, very, very thick paste almost. And that's what we're after. But it's very pourable, it's very easy to get into containers while it's still warm. So you don't, you want to be prepared to transfer your medicine into whatever container you're going to use immediately upon completion, because as soon as it sets up, then you've got a nice sticky resin that is not going to be easy to deal with. So you don't want to be having it left in your pan like that. So we'll go ahead and pause now, and we'll be back, and then we'll finish the process, and you'll get to see your completed product. Okay, so now it's finished, and here we have the finished product. As you can see, it gets very concentrated. So this is what you end up with. Out of all of that, this is the amount of resin that was extracted. And it seems like a little bit, but it is so concentrated, and this is actually a lot of medicine. Now, I like to put it into a syringe. I find that it makes dosing easier for individuals because you just push and a little bit comes out. But it is much easier to get the medicine into one of these type of containers. And so if you, syringes are available because you use them for dosing medications and things like that. So you can find them online very easily. They're not illegal, and to have in your possession. They come without needles, so they're totally safe. But you can get syringes, and then you just the first drawing is very easy because you've got lots of medicine that you can draw up into the syringe. So you can take it and you just stick the syringe down, and then you draw it up into it. And then you'll just clean the head off. And there you have a good gram of oil in there. You just set it like that. But if you were using a container like this, then you would just pour it off into here, and it's much easier. And then just use a toothpick to get your grain size piece out, or however much medicine you've built up to. So, and that's basically it. You are done. So in about an hour, you go from start to finish, and you have a good 3 to 4 grams of medicine to use, and then you just plan for it. As you're using it, you'll learn how quickly or how slowly you use your medicine, and then you can just plan for the next batch and the next batch as you're getting low. And it goes very, it's just such an easy process without any risk. As you can see, there's no flame involved, so you have no risk of fire or explosions or anything that they talk about. Because you're using water, you're turning your heat source off, so it's completely safe. And then you take an hour and you're completely finished. So it makes it very easy to create your Rick Simpson oil on a small scale, and it's much, much, much more simple than it sounds when you're watching, the process of large batch formulation of the oil. So thank you for joining me with this tutorial, and I hope that it helps you feel more confident in making your own medicine.